Can you hear me? I'll see if we worked out the audio problems. If anybody can hear me, put it in the comments. I apologize for all that. It's aggravating. Before I start, can you hear me? Am my sound coming through? It coming through on your phone? You can. Okay. Okay. Well, hopefully somebody will join. It's aggravating. For being patient and working through it. For some reason, the camera changed microphone inputs, and I didn't notice. Had to go in and manually change it back. And to manually change it back, I've got to stop the live feed and create a new live feed. Okay. Well, I appreciate everybody for joining me. Lisa said we can hear you perfectly. Great. Thank you, Lisa. Before I start, I want to mention, if you remember the horse, Hope, she was a black mare that I had in training for several months. Really nice mare. Her owner is in surgery right now to remove a clot in his brain. So if you would, keep him in your thoughts and prayers. When I find something out, I'll let you know. But he had a, tell you a little bit about what happened. I don't think he'll mind if I tell you. He went, took his gelding, his other horse, not Hope, but the other one, did something that day, rode the horse, had a really good time. On the way home, car T-boned him into the side of his truck. Actually rolled his truck over, flipped the truck, flipped the trailer. Really bad accident. Totaled his truck and his trailer. His horse in his trailer barely had a few scratches. The trailer was turned over on its side. He was able to get in the trailer with his horse and while they cut the horse out of the trailer. Led the horse out, and a friend of his had come, and the horse went right back into another trailer. And then he went to the hospital. Had some injuries, nothing serious, very bruised ribs, very sore, but things just weren't right, and they just found out this blood clot in his brain. I assume he had a bleed, and then it clotted. I really don't know how that works, but he's in surgery right now for that. So keep him in your thoughts and prayers. Really, really good person. I did a Facebook post a while back about not to disengage your horse when you're working them on the lunge line. And in that situation, I was talking about yielding the hind end around disengage to stop forward movement, which I believe is very bad for your horse. It puts them on the front end, inverts their back, counterproductive to everything you're ever going to ask that horse to do. But in the comments, it became pretty obvious that a lot of people really don't know what an engaged hind end is, and they really don't know when the hind end is disengaged. And you really need to understand that in order to understand why disengaging the hind end on a lunge line is so bad, and why disengaging the hind end, I think, anytime is bad. Now, there's some things like if you're doing a one rein stop for a safety measure to protect yourself, if your horse is trying to run off, you can disengage the hind end. It's saving you. It's not good for the horse, but it's saving you. There are better ways to do that than a one rein stop. I really don't like a one rein stop either, but that's what people have been taught. One rein stops aren't really good for your horse. does save you. So in the process of keeping you safe, you're gonna be the more important of the two. But there's better ways to protect yourself than doing a one rein stop. We'll get into that later. But when you are engaging your horse's hind end, I just got on her, walked around. Let me move her body around a little bit, get her mind on what I'm doing. Then we'll talk a little bit more. So walking around, I'm having a little bit of a counter bend here, head to the outside, a little bit of right leg up by the back girth. Now I'm going to take my left leg and push it back, push the hip in to the right, head to the right. I am engaging the hind end to the right. A lot of commenters in that post believe that anytime you push the hind end out, you're disengaging the hind end. That is not true. Hind end can be engaged up to the right. That's a right lead. Hind end can be engaged up to the left. That's a left lead. I'll show you that. So if I take my right leg back, push the hind end in, hind end is engaged to take the left lead. You saw it step out and under. Do a little bit more of a side view. Stepping out, just kind of overdoing it here and under. That you need that hind end engaged for a good lope departure, good lead changes. So if the hind end is out when you go to do a lead change, you're not going to get your lead change. Let's see. I'm not sure if she'll let me disengage her hind end to the side. Something we never work on. Whoa. So when I talk about in the very beginning of starting to control the hip, let's say if I'm going to push the hip to the left, I get the hip pushed to the left, and then I'll point the nose to the left. What that does, that creates this curve of the spine, curved to the left, but also up too. It's kind of curved in this kind of an angle, kind of curved up and oblique. Where if I push the hip this way and I bring the nose that way, what that does, I really don't have any curve. I still have the horse in a straight line. And then what happens is the nose comes out and the back end goes out. And then you end up disengaging the hind end. I'm going to try that. I don't know if she's probably going to be confused because anytime the butt goes that way, the head is supposed to go that way, which creates engagement. I've talked about using my legs to control the head, and that's what that is. But let's see what's going to happen. I'm going to push her hip that way, bring her nose to the right, and let's see what she does. I'm not sure what you can see there, but the head went to the right. She stepped out a little bit. Let's play with that again. I'm going to push the hip this way, bring the head to the right, and then ask her to walk off. And then I'm going to come back and do it again, push the hip this way, bring the head to the left, and then ask her to walk off. Now let's see if you can see any difference in her balance when she goes to walk off. I've always taught her to engage. There might not be any difference, but we'll see. Hip to the left, nose to the right, nose to the right. Now let's walk off. She had a hard time walking forward. Now I'll come back around. I'll do it again. Hip to the left, nose to the left, and then walk off. Hip to the left, nose to the left, and walk off. Much, much better, much more put together, much more round. I can feel myself lift. Put in the comments if you can see any difference there. I'll do it again the other direction. To walk off and see what that looks like. Hip to the right. She's already bringing her head to the right. Hip to the right, head to the left. Now let's walk off. She's actually staying pretty engaged. She knows that's what she's supposed to do. Whoa. Now hip to the right, nose to the right, and walk off. There. Feels much better. I don't know if you can feel it's better rhythm to the walk off. middle's up better, even when I go the opposite direction. It's not terrible because that's how she's taught to hold her body. If you see any difference, put it in the comments. I'm not sure if you can or not because she's so much ingrained on staying round and staying engaged.
With the first time you did it, Angela said big difference. First one was visibly awkward.
Yeah, definitely. First one, it felt awkward. It felt like she was having a hard time walking off, and that's because a horse is supposed to get its engagement from the back end and push itself forward. When I disengage the hind end and then walk forward, the horse is all on its front end, and she really just had to kind of recollect herself to walk forward. Um, it's a huge, huge difference with the horse, and when you're training the horse, you always want that round back. You always want that engagement. That's why I never disengage a horse, never ever, for any reason, on the lunge line, on the back. I have a different way of working them when they start fast, and where a lot of people do a one rein stop, I do something different. We'll probably get into that one day, but I don't have any horse right here to demonstrate it with. Years ago, I had a big black gelding that was perfect at that. He run off with his owner all the time. And what happens when the horse runs off with you and you do the one rein stop and get stopped, you're protecting yourself. That's good. And you get stopped, you regain your composure, take a breath because you're pretty shook up, and then you go to riding again. Well, think about it from the horse's point of view. From the horse's point of view, he ran off with you, and then he got to stop. He got the reward. How do we reward when a horse does something good? We release the pressure. Well, the horse is getting a release of pressure from doing the one rein stop after it runs off with you. So you're really just encouraging the horse to keep doing that. And in many cases, I see riders that continually have to do that one rein stop because the horse keeps running off with them, and that's why. But when I have a good horse in here that I can demonstrate what I use instead of a one rein stop, I'll show you. Any other comments?
Not on that. You do still have a question.
Okay, what's your question?
It's from Angela. Do you shift your weight in the saddle to indicate which lead you want in a lope?
Okay, Angela asked, do I shift my weight in the saddle to indicate which lead I want in the lope? The answer is really no, not with the older finished horse. Now, if I have a green horse that I'm just working lead changes with, sometimes I will shift my weight to kind of help the horse figure out what it's supposed to do. But generally, I want to work towards staying centered with the horse. A while back, a good while back, maybe a year ago, I talked about using my weight and my feet to help guide the horse in the circles. I don't talk about that a whole lot. And the reason being is when I start talking about shifting your weight with a beginner rider, they end up getting way over here and way over here with their upper body. And that's poor horsemanship. That you shouldn't be doing that. When I shift weight, I'm shifting my weight with my hips. I'm bringing my hips over here or I'm bringing my hips over there. I still stay centered on my horse. My upper body is centered. I'm just putting more weight on this side or more weight on that side from my hips. So I don't talk much about shifting weight because it's really detrimental to beginner riders. Now, when I give more advanced lessons, we do a lot of steering with pushing with this foot or pushing with that foot. You go over here and push. You go over here and push. But that's you're doing. Excuse me. You're doing that from your hips. You're not doing that from your shoulders. Uh, most all beginner riders, they're kind of clamped on with their lower body. And it's not soft and it's not moving with the horse. And they're trying to move their upper body around while their middle and their lower body is clamped on. So when I start shifting weight, they end up doing it with their upper body. And that's not a good thing to do. So from the very beginning, when I start working a horse, I always want the hind end engaged. When I'm teaching the horse the very beginning of moving the hip, a lot of people when they move the hip this way, they bring the nose the opposite way, because that does help the horse figure out it's supposed to move the hip, but it's not moving the hip and staying around and staying engaged. Engaging the hip is really only the first part of collection with your horse. Collection should come from the back forward. You should engage the hip, lift the back, round the neck, break at the pole. That's how engagement, that's how a collection should work, in that order. I've talked in some videos about people working the horse's face, trying to get the face in. And you can make that happen, but you're not getting the engagement from behind and the roundness in the back. That's what's really important. Walk around just a little bit. That's all. Go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah. Well, do you remember that? What's that question? I,
Comes from Jerry, and she said, I've disengaged only for respect or to ask for that break when things get out of hand. Can you explain when and why you use disengagement in your training if you
Okay, so Jerry said that she only disengages to gain respect and when stuff gets out of hand, and asked me, when do I work disengagement? I never ever disengage a horse's hind end. Everything I'll ever want the horse to do, I'm going to want it to do engaged. So I will never ask a horse to disengage and push his back end out. Um, that goes back, a big reason, a big part of why I talk about starting horses young, 2, 3 year old range, so that you're building these muscles, so that you're building that engagement. It's not a matter of doing a lot of trotting, a lot of steering. That's not what it's about. What it's about is developing these muscles for that engagement, because so many horses are so heavy on their front end because they haven't used their back ends correctly. We're left-handed and right-handed, left-sided and right-sided. Horses are left-sided and right-sided. Well, they're also front-sided or back-sided, and a lot of the higher-level performance horses are naturally engaged in the back, naturally use their back end really good. But a lot of I mean, that may be 10% of the horses out there. Most of the horses are not naturally back end engaged. They're kind of middle of the road, front to back, or they're very heavy on the front. So when I'm starting a 2 year old, a 3 year old, that's what I'm working on. I'm developing the muscles in the hip, I'm developing the muscles in the back. And by developing those muscles, I'm making those muscles stronger so that the horse has the frame to do what I'm going to ask it to do in that 3, 4, 5 year old year. That's why I believe it's so important to do that. If you wait till a horse is 4 or 5 years old to start that, then his muscles are already mostly developed, and you're trying to change what's there, which you're not going to get as much change. You're not going to get it as good, and the horse is always going to want to revert back to what it naturally put on. Because if he travels front end heavy, and you work on engaging the back end, you'll make it better. But kind of his natural way of going is front end heavy. Where when you start a horse younger, engaging the back end, teaching roundness, that more becomes their foundation, their base, their go-to. I have horses, many horses here. I turn them loose in the pasture and just running in the pasture. They're using their hind end very well, and that's why they stay so healthy, because they use their hind end so well, and because they're taught, those muscles are trained to be that way. That's what they use in the pasture, and they maintain a little bit better. I put just, I think the day before yesterday, turned Qatar loose in the big arena, and he's running around the arena doing, look like reining slides, sliding on his back end, because he keeps his back engaged. He's a dressage horse. He was taught to carry himself that way. He's using his back end that well because that's what he was taught to do. Another question?
Yes. Okay. Angela said, thanks. If you recall which horse you were on when you discussed rider left, right, let us know. I'd like to go back and review that video.
Okay. Rider balance left, right. I think I might have been on Ray. I'm not sure.
She probably can go type in YouTube Tim Anderson.
Yeah, you probably could go to my page, click on videos, and search rider balance, center riding, balance rider, something like that, and it should narrow it down. You should be able to search it that way. A lot of people don't realize that you can search videos, and what it is, you're searching words that are in the title, and if it's in the title, it should come up.
Okay, Chris would like to know, were your horse mentors of the same idea to keep engaged?
Were my horse mentors of the same idea to keep engaged? Yes, they were. They were all people that had performance horses that went and did something. And it doesn't matter what you do, your horse needs to be engaged. So the guy that taught me most of this basic work, he was a roping trainer, and he trained rope horses, and he always kept his horses engaged. Most of the rest of them were reiners and cow horse people or ranch people, and the same thing. You have to have your horse round, and rode with a jumper a good bit. A friend of mine is a jumper. He did the same thing. It's all good, correct, basic horsemanship, and where we got lost in that is clinicians taught to disengage on the lunge line because that's easier to teach, it's easier to learn, but it's just not good for the horse. And it's gotten to where universally that's where a lot of people get stuck. That's where a lot of problems create. And it's I have Grace in there, the one that's here for EPM work that has EPM. She's very, very heavy on her front end. And a lot of that is from the EPM on the back end, but I really think she was heavy on the front end to begin with. So it's really going to be a lot of work with her, getting her back in, her hips and her back built back up.
Okay, Kathy would like for you to give some examples of how you developed that hind engagement.
Okay, so how I develop the hind end engagement, it's very simple. So all I'm going to do when I have a young horse that I'm teaching to move the hind end around, basically all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my left leg, I'm going to put it back to push the hip around. Now, when I have a horse that don't know what they're supposed to do, I'm going to just kind of set my hands and try to keep the horse still. When the hip goes over, I take the rein on the same side, tilt the nose, and we walk off. That engages the hip that way. She knows, so she's going to do it right away. But with a horse that don't know, that's all. That's how I do it. And let's left leg back, push the hip over, right rein, and walk forward. And normally, when I'm working with a horse, I'll teach the bend, counter bend, working the shoulders first, and then pretty quick I go to working the hind end. And you have to have control of the shoulders because many horses that don't understand when you go to put your leg, you go to put your leg back in the hip instead of just moving the hip, they'll move the whole body. And that's why I want the shoulders first, so I can use this leg to help say no, the shoulders need to go that way. Okay.
Jen, I just started lunging my 2-year-old filly, and she keeps rearing when I ask for forward movement. Any suggestions? Thanks.
Okay. 2-year-old is rearing when she asks for forward movement. Just keep asking for forward movement. While her feet are in the air, tell her to go forward. Um, I would be willing to bet, I mean, I haven't seen, but I would be willing to bet you're asking go. Horse rears up, take the pressure away, feet hit the ground, you ask her to go, horse rears up, you take the pressure away. That's typically how things would happen because while the horse is in the air, you want to kind of give the horse a chance to come down. You don't want a horse to fall over sideways. That's what would be the logical way of thinking. But what you need to do is while the horse is in the air, you need to be sending the horse forward with your lunge whip, your bag, whatever you're using. And you need to be using something. I don't really care what you use, but you need to be using something that's strong enough to send that horse forward while the horse is up. Because if you think about it, what do? We apply pressure when the horse is doing the wrong thing. We take pressure away when the horse is doing the right thing. So while the horse is up, that's when you need to be applying pressure. When her feet come to the ground and she starts moving, that's when you get softer on your pressure. So let's walk around a little bit. I got another part of this engage, disengage I want to talk about. It goes back to the comments in that Facebook post. And if you want to look at it, you can go to my Facebook page and scroll down. I made that post just a couple of days ago, and I actually had a follow-up post that came out this morning. So imagine I'm coming down the wall, and I'm going to do a rollback to the right. Let's get a little straighter. We're kind of crooked. There we go. And we're going to do a rollback to the right. I had a couple people comment that the horse needs to disengage his hind end out so that the front end can come around. And that is the opposite of what needs to happen. When you're doing a rollback, what needs to happen is the horse needs to engage his back end, load up his back end, round his back so he can pick the front end up and come around. So if I bring her and ask her to step back and then turn to the wall, that back end, all that weight loads up on that horse's back end. Now I can control whether it's the inside leg or the outside leg, depending on what type of rollback I'm looking for. Rein and rollback, I want inside leg. Cow horse rollback, I want outside leg. So let's show you that again. If I ask her to push her hip out, just like if you saw in the beginning where she had a harder time walking out, the thought process of pushing the hip out to give the horse more room, I'm loading the horse up and it's going to have a harder time coming around, just like you saw earlier in the video when I disengaged and asked her to walk forward. So let's ask her to back up. And come around. You saw how light that front end was and how strong she used her back end. No, there is no point of training that I will ever disengage the hind end. In fact, we'll come over here and we'll talk about that to the next level. Let's say I'm running a cow down the fence and we got a little bit of speed going. Cow's right here. We're at a pretty good lope, maybe a dead out gallop. We're going pretty fast. That cow is going to make the turn and go the other way. My horse is going to make the turn and go the other way too. If that horse loads up his front end, it's going to get stuck right there and not going to be able to turn on the cow. And usually the shoulder that you have a problem with is this inside shoulder right here. The cow ducks this way. The horse kind of leans towards the cow and loads up this and disengages the hind end. So what I'm actually going to do, I teach my horse when we're going down the fence with a cow, we're actually going to do a haunches in towards the cow, and we'll stop, back up, and then roll back. So that as I'm going down the fence, the horse has his shoulder up with the haunches in a little bit. Or with the shoulder out, haunches in. Yeah. That keeps that shoulder out of the way because it's the inside shoulder that becomes the problem when a horse gets stuck in the rollback. Right there, she lost her engagement in the back end. That's why she got fumbling in the front. Let's do that again. That's exactly what happens when you lose your engagement. That one wasn't as good as it was earlier. She's thinking about it now. And you notice the rollbacks aren't as good either. That's that hind end. And what'll happen when you do several rollbacks, the horse will start trying to get the hind end out of the way because it's a little easier. They think it's going to be easier because they're preparing themselves for it. But it's actually a little bit harder. Any other questions? I'll walk her around a little bit. I appreciate everybody for sticking with me through the technical issues that I had getting started. We had when I lost the YouTube channel and we had to reload everything, the default microphone changed. And I didn't notice it when I was trying to set it up. I had to change the default microphone back. So let's talk about how the engaged hind end applies to a stop, a transition. Let's start with a transition. Let's bring her up to a trot. First time I trotted her since I've been on this morning. Just have my hand set still, using both legs to ask her to round her back, go forward, and I'm going to ask for a transition down to a walk. What should happen is that back end should stay engaged. The transition should be fluid, and the horse's head should stay fairly level. I don't mind it coming up a little bit, but I don't want it popping up real hard. See there, that was a transition down to a walk that stayed engaged. Horse's back stayed round, head stayed soft. When the horse disengages, the hind end comes out, back inverts, head comes up. Let's do that again. Go all the way around one more time. I'll do it on that side closer to the camera. Just anticipating again. Have legs on her, legs, 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 legs. Sit and walk. And if you notice, I softened my feet, but I kept riding forward. That keeps the horse engaged forward. I never ask a horse to stop immediately or to back immediately after we stop. We'll stop, pause, and then we'll back up. See that back end engaged in that backup? But what'll happen, and she'll probably go right into the backup from the stop at this point. When they're greener, it creates a problem. Let's stop and go straight to the backup. Yeah, see, she's far enough along that it's not a problem. But what happens when you have a horse that's not staying round, that's not staying engaged, when you do that stop, they fall on their front end a little bit. And then when you go to back them up, they're not balanced right, so they kind of push on your hands. And then so you pull, you get a little bit more aggressive, and then in response to that, they push a little harder. So you're creating kind of a downward spiral. Where when I have a greener horse and I ask them to stop, let them settle a little bit, and she's already sucking back. Good girl.
Angela said, I practiced those rollbacks so much after the clinic video where you worked with Herm.
Oh yeah, those we did a lot of that with Herm, and that's exactly kind of along the lines of what was going on with Herm's horse. She was just, I think it was a mare, might have been a gallon, I don't remember, but was just kind of naturally heavy on the front end, and use those rollbacks to get the horse to use its front end and engage the back end, lift the front end. I do that a lot. You have to have some control of the shoulders first, and then all you're doing, like you watching her, you see her, I do something once or twice, she starts anticipating what comes next. All I'm using is that anticipation that when I stop over here, that rollback's going to happen. And you're just using that anticipation so the horse, that one's a lot better, so that the horse gets himself in the position to do what he knows you're going to ask him to do. Using that anticipation for your benefit. A lot of people, a lot of people miss out on that opportunity. She's stuck right there. So when I came to stop right there, she stopped heavy on this foot. Then that's why she's stuck in that rollback. Let's try that again. And by say me saying she's heavy, it's not like a lot. That one was better. It's not like a lot. I could just feel that foot just load up just a little bit. She probably put an extra 10 pounds on that foot. And I changed direction. She kind of loaded that foot up. That is where you have to keep working on a horse. And as a horse progresses and gets older, she's 4 now. When she's 6, you might be working on some different things. When she's 8, you might be working on some different things. That's just how a horse is. You're always kind of working on something, but you have to have that collection for it to be right.
Okay, Colleen, she said, I'm a dressage beginner. Will you do a shoulder out, haunches in a straight line toward the camera so I can see your inside leg position?
Sure, that's a really good question.
You can tell her who you responded to.
Okay, Charlene? Colleen. Okay, Colleen. So she's a beginner dressage rider. I'm going to make one circle and then I'll come around and do it. She's a beginner dressage rider, and she wants me to do a shoulder out, haunches in, so she can see where my inside leg is. And that's really important because what I'll do is I'll push the hip to the left. I'll bring the nose to the left. And this shoulder basically can go out a little bit, but it still needs to be tracking forward. That's the important part. You have to keep tracking forward. I'll turn, go towards the camera. Let's get straight. Now right leg back. Left leg is basically a little bit of contact, just like the right leg. And I'll circle around. I'll do it again the other direction. Basically, my outside leg is back a little bit, adding contact. My inside leg is right behind the girth, adding a little contact. So I'll come at the camera again. This time I'll go the other direction. Left leg back, right leg forward, and track forward. Now, how much pressure I put with each foot is going to depend on what the horse is doing. It's not always the same amount of pressure. When I started that turn, she immediately got bent, and I had to actually put a little bit of inside leg on her to keep her tracking forward. Let's do that one again. Left leg back, right leg behind the girth. Now let's track forward. And we'll circle to the right. I'm going to do one more thing. I'll bend one way, track forward, bend the other way, track forward. And what I'm doing there is I'm practicing the mechanics for a flying lead change. I get the horse doing that really nice at a walk, really nice at a trot, really nice at a lope, and you have flying lead change. So let's push the hip to the left, shoulder to the right. Now let's change bend, left hip to the right, shoulders to the left. That was a flying lead change. I like to have a little better rhythm. She's got a fly on her somewhere that's bothering her. Circle around, we'll do it again. You want the horse to maintain their rhythm. You don't want them speeding up. You don't want them slowing down. Well, it's just consistency. Just consistency. Let's hip to the right, shoulders to the left. Now let's change bend. Swap my legs. Change bend the other way. Whoop, kind of lost it. There we go. And we'll circle around this way. And flying lead changes is something we've been working on with her. That is exactly where she is. She is a 4-year-old. We're towards the end of a 4-year-old year. And she was one that was started, I assume, as a 3-year-old. I really don't know, but I assume she was started as a 3-year-old. And she came to me somewhat broke and knowing some of those things, but she was still pretty green, not very consistent. Her mind was all over the place. And I've had her 8 months, and it took 8 months to get this. And at the show in Tampa a few weeks ago, she won her first National Reining Horse Association check in the limited open division. So it's just consistency, and it's not necessarily riding hard. You need to ride hard once in a while. That goes back to my 50, 70, and 90% days. That is really important. 2 50% days a week, 2 70% days a week, 1 90% day, and 50% effort, 50% of what the horse is capable of, 2 70% days, 70% of what the horse is capable of, and one 90% day. And you have to have those two 50% days. You have to be reinforcing these basics. That one 90% day gets the horse to work a little bit harder. We're going to be a little bit more, maybe a little bit more loping, maybe stop a little harder, maybe spin a little faster. And you notice I never ask a horse for 100% of what they're capable of, ever. But when I'm consistent with that 50, 70, and 90, that 90 keeps pushing out a little bit further. That 100% is a little further because that horse becomes better physically fit, better endurance, better stamina. So they just continually get better, even though I never ask for that 100% day. I think that's really important, because if you start 100% day once in a while is okay. But if you start asking for too many of those, then you end up creating injuries. You end up with problems. And asking for those 100% days when you should be doing a 50% day, your horse just doesn't hold together. I think we're going to end this live on that. I really appreciate everybody for sticking with me through these technical issues in the beginning. And if you have any questions about this, send me a message. I'll be happy to answer them. And if you did not read those articles that I put on my Facebook page, they're on Tim Anderson Horse Training on Facebook. And they talk about this engaged and disengaged, and why I never disengage a horse, and why it's so important to always ask your horse to engage. So I appreciate you watching. Until next time, thank you for watching.